All right. I was really wondering about what to talk about tonight. And it came to me that I really wanted to talk about my direct experience. And I wanted to let that really inform the talk. And I don't know about you, but my direct experience is a little repetitive at the moment. Has that sense of every day feeling like a little bit like yesterday, unless my mind is very attentive to nuance, which the practice helps me to see in. But the name of the talk tonight is called Loving Strangers on Your Path. And this is something that's really come to my awareness in the recent second lockdown. If you're in Melbourne, you'll be locked down as I am. And I think one of the more difficult aspects of living in this time of the virus for me has been the recent introduction and common good sense of needing now to wear a mask. And it really struck me in a sort of as a full-bodied experience, this new and very sort of unfamiliar practice of putting a mask on. It's not something I've ever done before. So although the regulation begins tonight at midnight, I have been practicing wearing a mask more and more as I go out into the world. And I've just been fascinated by what my mind makes of that simple, direct experience. And I really wanted to bring the practice to the proliferation and the proliferation of mind that gets going when I start up this new habit. And because this practice of insight meditation has these two important elements to it, which is really key to what we call insight meditation, and that is of being aware of phenomena and investigating the phenomena that comes to your awareness. So I wonder if that is how you relate to insight practice, these two wings of practice, these two important aspects of practice. It's being aware of your direct experience and then investigating what's going on in what you become aware of. And that investigation is very non-analytical. It's just seeing patterns and tracing it back to causes and conditions, for example, and understanding how the mind works. So this emphasis on our awareness and our investigation is on, as I said, this direct experience. What is happening right now? It's never an intellectual exercise. It's always the opportunity to meet what is right here with you right now. It's a very lived experience that we're interested in. So whatever is arising in any given moment is the material for insight practice. And for me, it's the investigation of this experience of putting on a mask and what it feels like to enter into those mundane tasks or those common experiences of being out in public with a mask on. So, I mean, anything can be the object of attention and investigation in the insight practice. The Buddha said, bring everything under the light of attention. So this has really struck me in the last few days. And I find it infinitely fascinating, this practice of insight meditation, because what I'm investigating, what we're asked to be investigating, is what happens when information comes in through the senses, things you see and smell and touch and hear and think about, what the mind does with that raw material I'm calling your direct experience, the way it interprets everything, analyzes everything, labels everything, projects and defends against all this information, and all the habitual patterns and mind loops and rigid beliefs and obsessiveness that arises when this information is coming through. So the practice is very much about seeing these phenomena of mind, these tendencies, these habits. And that really helps for me to see these habits as deeply conditioned and not who I am, but they can come to be seen as either wholesome or unwholesome, or helpful and unhelpful. And then there's a sense that I have a choice as to whether I want to feed those mental fabrications or those habits and tendencies. And it also helps me to, when I'm closer to my direct experience, to see that the world is not the way my mind conceives it. So it helps me to see into the truth of experience when there's enough awareness and investigation on board. And it also helps me to wake up from the spell that the content of my own mind is who I am. So I can start to disentangle myself from the identity that I might wrap around all the thoughts and beliefs in my mind. So this is what I've been doing as I've been investigating the wearing of a mask. So this is a brave new world, is it not? Unless you've been in the medical profession, this is an incredible thing to investigate, because it's something new. And when we do something new, there'll be a lot of messaging in the mind. There'll be a lot of fresh material when you do something new. There's a real wake up in the mind. In yoga, the word asana, or yoga posture, means to put the body in a new place so that the mind wakes up. And that is literally what it's felt like to be wearing a mask. It feels so sort of strange and new. So I've been getting really interested in the bodily experience of having to do this and noticing my mind's relationship with this covering up. So you may not have entered into the mask world, you may not be in Melbourne, so you might be free from that. But I hope it's this newness of doing something new and different and strange. You can relate to it somehow, maybe being, new at work, or entering a new phase of your life, and what reverberates in your internal world when you take up something new. So when I started to wear this mask just a few days ago, what I first began to watch in my own mind, because Vipassana is this practice of putting the light of attention on the mind. So what I started to watch in my own mind was the resistance and the mind's pushing away experience. So there was a sense that it was unpleasant, and then there was this reaction in the mind and this resistance, and this when I was doing it, I felt like a sort of 3-year-old or 2-year-old. I don't want to do this. This is awkward. Even though at a rational level, I can see that it's absolutely makes good sense, and I have no rational argument against it. In fact, I think it's really good sense. But I could feel this part of myself really contracting away from it. This sense, watching the mind and the story in the mind, this is ridiculous and this is awkward. And how long do I have to wear this? And I don't want to wear this. This is uncomfortable. And then all this story, this fabrication in the mind. What's going to happen to all these masks? There's so many disposable masks. How long can I really keep this on? And then sort of a sense of, oh, look at me, I'm doing the right thing, I'm wearing my mask. It's just incredible. What's everybody complaining about? This is not such a big deal. All the blah, 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 blah that goes on in the mind. Extraordinary to simply watch when we can step out of the flow and the content and just see this story mind unraveling. Me as a kind of victim, me as the hero, and how I can flip-flop. We can all flip-flop between. Fascinating to watch your mind do that. Just to to watch your mind and all its stories, and also to watch the feelings that arise when you're being asked to do something new, whether it's distance or stay home or put on a mask or not see your friends. You know, there are really strong feelings that arise from all this change that we're going through. And, you know, chiefly sort of sense of sadness, genuine sense of loss, and this strong sense of uncertainty and the worry that comes with it. And you know, comes into stark relief when I see myself in a mask, or I see other people in a mask, just sort of really reminded that life is so different. But by far the most fascinating mental phenomena I've been bringing this light of attention to is seeing how when I meet another person in a mask, my mind depersonalizes them. They're less they're less of someone I can relate to, because now I'm only seeing this tiny part of them. So it's as if seeing a masked stranger on my travels through the world somehow reduces them down. It's as if the brain is no longer picking up enough signals, and I watch how the mask turns strangers on my path to the other. They become the other person, more the other person. They become the stranger. They become the possible sick person. So they become a thing, more of a thing than something fully relatable, fully embodied. And how alien everyone seems to my mind now that I can't read them, I can't sense them, I can't see the fullness of them. And to watch my mind doing that on my behalf. It's not a choice that I'm making. It's not a conscious, deciding that in the mind. This is what the mind is starting to do, and I'm beginning to notice. And I'm also becoming aware of this sort of deep sadness that can come with walking sort of ghost-like through all these masked beings as we shuffle around in the local shops or walk past each other in the park. Or I really feel this sort of subtle, sometimes subtle sense of heavy-heartedness as we shuffle around each other's with ourselves now shrouded. So my practice then evolves to become a practice of turning towards those difficult feelings that I'm noticing, rather than getting lost in the story about those feelings, but really noticing and befriending and holding and attending to those feelings and those thoughts. To be able to hold my slightly heavier heart gently, because I miss my fellow shoppers. I miss the strangers in my life, those people that we tend to meet all day that we don't know very well, but we most often have a genuine care for. Those strangers, I love contact with strangers. It's endlessly fascinating to me. I love those momentary, fleeting moments where you have the briefest relationship with someone that might last 2 seconds or 5 seconds as you pass each other on the path. Yeah? I really savor the richness of contact, brief connection with strangers in my life. I think it's absolutely incredible how many people, even in lockdown, if you just go to the shops, or I like to go for a daily walk or walk down my street, it's incredible how many people we see each day whom we don't know. We know nothing about them. And to watch what moves through your heart and mind when you come into contact with strangers. Maybe it's someone who's making your takeaway coffee, or someone serving you when you buy your food, or someone who walks past you with their dog. Or there are so many subtle relationships in there that we can get very, very interested in. So the Dharma practice for me at the moment is to simply meet this sense of loss that I'm noticing now that I can't see so much of the strangers of my path, and not get overwhelmed by that sense of loss, and not give in to a sense of what the mind might make of a stranger as just being another shrouded person who might have a virus in them. So not reducing that person down. And I think the practice is also an invitation to continue our metta practice, as the Buddha instructed us to do, our loving kindness practice of extending loving generosity outwards, as he taught, to what he taught, the Buddha taught us to do, to widen and rise to the challenge of extending warmth to all beings everywhere, including strangers. And he was very particular about including strangers in his circles of care when he described the ways and the concentric circles of people that we can extend our loving kindness to, beginning with ourselves, people we love, people we care about, maybe mentors or guides on the path. And then one of the objects of our metta and loving kindness he named was strangers. And I take this very seriously, this practice of sending loving kindness to those fleeting strangers on your path, with all beings who perhaps now are a little further at a distance, but we're still having some contact with them in the supermarket, in the streets, wherever you are. And more than ever, I think we need to remember that behind each stranger, whether they're masked or not, whether they're at a further distance or not, is a fellow human who, just like yourself, wants to be happy, wants to live in safety and in ease. And I'm really struck by how human beings, even when they are strangers to each other, have an incredible natural tendency for goodness and for care. So just last week, I live near quite a busy main road, and I was walking on this main road, and I witnessed quite a nasty car accident. And luckily, the drivers of the cars were absolutely, unscathed physically, and they were able to walk away from their vehicles. But they were clearly very distressed and in quite some shock. And a group of us pedestrians moved in towards the drivers and organised ourselves around these two strangers who'd been in the car accident. And there was this reflexive movement towards people who were in distress. And we divided our attention between the two of them. Some of us were sitting with them, some of us were holding their hands, helping them organise what they needed to do next, soothing their agitation. And there was a sense, I just remember, although I probably couldn't or shouldn't have, touching this woman, holding her hand, talking gently to her, as many of us were, attending to their frightened selves. So as caring strangers, we entered into this short, brief, intimate relationship with people who were suffering. And there was also this brief relationship with those of us who'd moved in, talking to each other, what have you done, what do we need to do next? There was this whole life inside these newly formed relationships as strangers. And that empathy and care and compassion just naturally flowed. There was no, we didn't need to elicit any of that. It just naturally arises. It's a natural response that arises when we're not operating out of fear. And it's just so touching to experience those fleeting moments of care and compassion with strangers. So the question is, can you look at other people through that lens, even if there's no distress, there's nothing you need to do? If you're just briefly passing through an exchange with someone who is making your coffee or serving you in some way? Can you look at that person and know too that mostly they are kind and caring themselves if they're not in fear? Know that they too are moved by suffering, knowing that everyone we come into contact with, even if it's very brief, want to be free, want to be well. It's so much easier for us to hold, to let our hearts hold our loved ones this way. But can you stretch your heart open a little and include strangers? Yeah, it's an opening of the heart. And one of the unique aspects of metta or loving kindness is that it doesn't make distinctions between beings. Because when we feel love, generally what we're talking about is sort of desire and love mixed together. And this is the feeling that we usually have for very limited people in our lives, our partners, our children, our friends, our family. We might love and desire a couple of people, maybe a circle of people. But it's quite hard it's quite a challenge, and a Dharma challenge, to extend genuine love without preference to all beings everywhere. So loving kindness is this extraordinary practice of embracing all. No one falls out of the circle of concern. That is the metta practice. Loving kindness is just this feeling that blesses ourselves and others with the simple wish, be happy, be well. It's so simple, and it doesn't discriminate. There's this beautiful line by this Japanese poet from the 18th century, and it really talks to this open-hearted feeling. And he says, "In the cherry blossom shade, there is no such thing as a stranger." So as your mind settles and becomes more open with consistent mindfulness practice, you might notice that you begin to see other people with less projection and less defensiveness, including strangers that you pass during your day. And we can learn to let loving kindness touch strangers many times in our day. So I really invite you to take this up as a practice as you're walking past people in the street or in the shops. They may be masked, you may not be able to see much of them, but wish them well. Whisper in your mind a metta phrase to them as you pass them. May you be well, may you be happy, may you be free from suffering. This is a really serious practice, to remember the humanity of people that we're now so distanced from. And with this practice of relationship with strangers, we slowly shift from this illusion of separateness, as sensing strangers as simply others, to recognizing the truth that another person's life has something to do with your own. And something amazing happens when you put yourself in relationship with strangers. You don't feel so alone. So I do this as I pass people. I wish for their happiness. I send them metta even behind the masks. And it's given me a great sense of natural vulnerability and this relational tenderness with beings, without even having to know a single thing about them. You don't need to know anything about them. And they don't even need to reciprocate. This is the beauty of sending strangers metta. There's no reciprocation. And there's no expectation of them doing the same for you. And it's incredibly liberating as a practice, sending strangers love on the path. Because just like you, strangers in your day, they have bodies that are tired and are sick. They too are visited by fear and longing and heartbreak. And they too, like you, will grow sick and age and die. So if you take up seeing the humanity behind the masks of the strangers in your life, it casts away the delusion that would have you believe that you are separate. And it's an extraordinary practice I invite you into. So putting on my mask and leaving home and sensing the beauty of the strangers behind their masks is my new Dharma practice. And it really helps me see my mind contract and defend itself. And then I invite my mind to open, my heart to open, and investigate the direct experience of contraction and opening with metta. So I invite you just to finish for this last minute to see someone on your screen, if you like, someone you do not know. Maybe it's just a name. You might not even see a face. So just if you just wander around the gallery and find someone you don't know. So I'm just going to do that myself. That's it. And they don't need to know that you're looking at them. Yeah, they have no idea. And you have no idea if anyone has chosen you. So it's completely anonymous, and it might be just a name. And just for a moment in your heart and in your mind, as you're looking at this person's face or their name, saying inwardly to this person, this stranger, may you be happy. Saying to them, may you be well. And saying to them, may you live with ease. And sensing how that experience is for you as you open your heart to this stranger. Feeling that connection without them even knowing that you're extending them this metta. Because that's what we all crave, isn't it? Connection. That's all we all really want. And it is possible with strangers on your path. Okay. Thank you for your kind attention tonight. Thank you for your practice. If it seems interesting to you or useful to you, taking up the practice of metta for those you don't know. Thank you so much, and I wish you a very gentle night, and I'll hand you back to Boyd. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angela.